YouTube. There's going to be a lot of background noise on this. I can't really help highway and stuff here. Anyway, I'm down under my Freedom Express, and the reason is I want to take this belly down, and you can see there's 2 bars across the frame here that are factory. The older ones, I haven't seen that, and I have known that there have been problems with the tank sagging or trying to fall out or cracking across various brands, but on these as well. And I wonder if they've added these 2 bars. But in any case, I've noticed that when the water tank is full, up here between the axles particularly, you'll see it sag down quite a bit. And kind of reaching up and pressing, like I can tell that's tank there and there. Seems to be a solid bulkhead running along here, and similarly behind me here, that's tank, and this here I'd imagine is a C-channel that's looped around the edge of the tank. So what I'm thinking I might do is put an additional fuel bar kind of between where this feels like there's a support and where this metal is. And then up here, you can have a look at it. I think the tank extends past that drain just a little bit, but I can't really tell. So I may put a steel bar behind the suspension hanger, possibly across the frame, to help support some of that. And also now and then, like manufacturers will say that you're not supposed to travel with a full tank of water. But for a lot of us in the West, the house is the last place that there's safe drinking water until you get to the campground. So you do end up carrying water, and then on the way back, getting back to town is the closest legal dump station, and I'm not one to dump untreated water someplace and get it back to a treatment plant. So anyway, there's self-tapping screws under a lot of this. The rest of it was put up with these Ramset type nails. Seems like an odd choice to me. I don't imagine they saved a lot of time doing that instead of using a self-drilling screw. But they chose to nail on this underbelly. These you can get off with a good vice grip. If the plastic centering thing there is still on, you can break it off and you can get a good bite on it and just twist it back and forth as you kind of work it out. And some of them pop out pretty easily and some don't. Then the other thing here, they've shot black foam. I'd imagine at the factory they started with this upside down, laid this underlayment, which is nice stuff. It's kind of fiber reinforced stuff with a cone pattern on it. Seems a lot more substantial than the typical corrugated plastic you see under these. Anyway, I'm sure they tacked it on here, flipped the frame upside down, foamed in all the corners when they dropped in the tank. So I've got some black foam too, and when I put this back, I'll squirt a little foam in there as I stick up each piece. And let's see here. Up here ahead of the axle, definitely tank. On the driver's side, third, feels like it may end basically right at where this drain is, so perhaps a bar right across here would prevent that sagging area that I'm seeing here. I want to minimize that before something cracks. And then the other things I want to do while I'm down here, I'll put a electric heating pad on the fresh tank since it didn't come with one. The black and gray tanks, the tanks themselves, I don't really have an issue with freezing, but there have been times I've hit a dump station and the drain valves are frozen. So while I'm under here, I may Got some electric heaters for elbows, 12-volt heaters. I thought I'd stick one under the insulation on the each of those pipes. Then I could have two switches inside, one for the black and gray elbow heaters and one for the fresh tank heater. So anyway, I'm gonna pull these screws and stuff out and try to pull some of this down. Oh, and I can show materials I have on hand for what I'm thinking. Okay, let's see here. These are number 10 self-drilling screws, and they fit through this factory washer, and the nail hole makes a really nice pilot hole for these. So they make a really good replacement. When I'm drilling into mild steel like that, where it's exposed to weather, I like to put a little clear silicone on the threads, just to kind of keep the where it's drilled through the frame protected from rust a little bit. Then I've got some of these 1x2 extruded steel channels. They're quite a bit heavier than the factory, but they're also quite rigid. I got a little strip of aluminum where that underlayment comes and meets the back of the frame. It's just kind of foamed down, and it's sitting on top of like a C-channel across the back of the frame, and that's kind of come undone a little bit. I'm thinking a little bit of using that as like a trim strip, possibly glue it to the upper side of the underlayment and then run screws up. It would bite this and suck that tight. I think might seal it better. And then I do have a piece of like 3/16 plate there. My thought was I'd take a piece of plate and weld it to the back of this, and then be able to run a screw down the middle and a screw on either end. That frame is not super thick I-beam, and I thought that might spread the load and have multiple fasteners holding this up if the tank ever did try to come detached and go over a bump and have that weight land on this. I don't want it to just rip out of the frame. And then I'll probably run 6 fasteners, like a self-tapper, perhaps 3 self-tappers on the inside of the I-beam. Then on the outside of the I-beam, I'll drill it and use a nut and bolt, since I'll have access to the outside, and that'd be a lot less likely to pull through the steel. You know, if there was ever a huge load on these, I think that would be pretty strong. And I'll have the holes kind of oversized with fender washers to give this a little bit of room to allow, of course, the frame's going to flex when it's under load and going over bumps and stuff, and I don't want to create a stress riser. So that's kind of what I'm working on here. And here's kind of what I'm talking about the C-channel on the back. You can see they've shot in some foam there, but I'm sure the wind is just shooting water and weather and stuff right around that. Along the edges, they've done a really nice job of sealing it tight, but this back edge leaves something to be desired. I'm not sure if I'll put this over this and screw it down, or if I'll try to get that piece of aluminum up above this and run a screw through here, thread it into that, and kind of clamp it all together. But I think this could be more, weather and rodent proof back here. Okay, kind of pulled some screws out and pulled this down, and it's different than I anticipated in that this tank comes almost to the back of the trailer. Surprised it has that much weight behind the rear axles, but then this thing is kind of nose heavy. Anyway, so you can see the tank, and you can kind of see where it does sag away from where that one U-channel is, and doesn't show real well in the video, but you can see it's got a pretty good sag there. It's got a bit of a sag between those U-channels, and then as I've noted before, ahead of those U-channels there's also a sag. So I think what I'll do I'm not sure I need to tear it apart any farther from here. I might see if I can shoot a snake. If I go behind my power panel and there's a hole in the floor, if I could shoot a snake this way and I could stick a heating element right there, I should be able to pull that wire up. And I've seen kind of what I want to see as far as where I'd like to put additional steel. Like there's no support along the end at all. It's just kind of relying on the strength of the fairly thin poly tank. I think I'll put a bar right across here, a bar between the two factory bars, and then another bar ahead of it. And I think that'll make this tank pretty bulletproof and freeze proof in here. I do have to say I am kind of surprised how nicely they took the time to seal this up, and I will squirt a little bit of foam right along that edge as I screw it back up to sort of restore that airtight seal, and we'll go from there. Hot out here today. So here's a tank heater pad. I think it's 65 watts and it's a peel and stick, and then two small heaters that are going to go on the black and gray pipe respectively. Some shrink lock butt connectors, air connectors, and some 10-2 tray cable, and a snake, and we'll see if I can't get that snake through there. I think looking at this trailer, looking up the driver's side edge of it there, I can see the opening below the power distribution panel with all the wires going out, and then the one little heat pipe kind of directed down towards the tanks. Oddly, when they built it, they left a cap for the spray foam in there. And then back here, I've kind of peeled back the insulation that I put on there before, since it's not enough to keep those from freezing. And pulled back a little bit of the underbelly. I think I can probably shoot a snake. The power center is going to be roughly right about here, I guess, or right ahead of these fittings, actually, and just to the forward of the furnace. So I should be able to shoot a snake right out the back, I think, and hook onto a piece of wire and pull it up, and then it should be really easy to shoot a snake through here and out the back and pull wires for both the valve heaters and the fresh tank heater up into the power compartment real quick. Then I can just get my spray foam out and put that underbelly back up, and now that I know where I want supports, I can cut and weld those and install those under the underbelly. That should be fairly straightforward. I think I will also pull the front underbelly partway off. I suspect hidden under there are a couple of those self-resetting circuit breakers, and I really don't like those in a charge source, so they'd be between the converter charger and the battery, mainly because they'll lose, under full load, they might lose half a volt. Just right there, they get warm and you end up with less than your desired absorption voltage at the battery. And I've got a 100 amp Bussmann Marine circuit breaker right there protecting the battery cables on this end, and then the inverter charger has, I think, two 30 amp fuses that protect the, I think it's a 55 amp converter charger. There probably is a resettable circuit breaker though that protects the electric jack. I'd imagine typically the electric jack, the 12 volt feed from the umbilical to the truck, and the breakaway switch are probably fed by a junction up under the floor. I really kind of hate that practice. I don't know why they can't put a little junction box out on the frame. If you were an electrician building a house and you hid a circuit breaker and a junction box inside a floor under a ceiling or whatever, And you'd probably be asking people if you want fries with that at your next job, because I don't think that would be tolerated. But apparently in RVs, that's sort of how they do it. Okay, this is going to be a lame video, I'm sure, but this is how this turned out. So those heat tapes are on the pipe, the insulation's back, and zip tied. I did put some Gorilla Tape on there just to kind of not let water enter in there, but anyway, both heaters are on. They're butt connected to that 10 gauge wire there, in convoluted split loom, and then up through the underbelly and around on the inside here. You can see the end of the snake out past the back bumper there. If you've watched my previous videos, you've seen how that comes out. 2 screws along the left under the cover there, and it just pivots out of 2 tabs in the side of the power converter there, and then there's 4 screws in the corner, and then you can just slide the whole power station right out. And then kind of got that little false floor there for the furnace. Back under it is a hole where the main wiring comes through the floor, and I just reached that snake through there and pushed it out the back and hooked it onto my wires for my heaters. I've got the one for the dump valves marked with white electrical tape, so when I get them up here, I'll know which one is which. And so then the negative ends, we'll just go to the main negative termination bar there. I do have one DC breaker available, so I'll run the hot lead to feed the switch will come in through here and connect to that one breaker and back up. And from that corner you can go right up this wall. So my plan is I've already got clock and indoor outdoor temperature, battery monitor, propane tank level, solar charge controller, the main panel there that's factory, the thermostat, and I think that would look fine there. And I'll then have a lighted switch for fresh tank heat and for the dump valves, at least on the black and gray tanks. So we'll just get that drawn up. Then I should be ready to put the underbelly back up. Like I said, I'll use some of that same black spray foam, just squirt a section with foam, screw that section up, squirt the next section, just to get it bonded and airtight sealed the way the factory had. Was pretty nice. And then the structural elements I'll add will be below that, and just bolted through the underbelly onto the frame. But I'll get the electrical stuff done first and cover back up. Okay, in case anybody's interested, I've got this front corner opened up just a bit. And in here, at least I used a junction box. It looks like all the brake, trailer lighting and all of that is in this junction box. And then up behind it, if I can get a shot of it, is a self-resetting circuit breaker. So it looks like the original 6-gauge battery cable, and I assume the wire for the breakaway branch off from that lug on the left, and then the lug on the right. The main wire there goes back to the power distribution block, and then there's some other minor wires I assume they're powering like the power jack and a few other little things on the end. Haven't decided. I think I'll probably, as long as I do have it open, I could probably use the existing battery cable to pull a heavier cable down there and reduce voltage drop a little bit. Still thinking about it. Let's see, I'm not sure exactly where I left off. I have the front end open here, and now that's all buttoned up. I actually added a few more screws just to make sure that that's really sealed. That's the same, except now there's a 4-gauge wire going back instead of the factory 6-gauge. All of that's going back in. Same thing with the back side. I just went through with self-tapping screws, and I have the 2 factory crossbars back, and I did back here underneath, instead of having that foam above that piece of C-channel, was the only thing holding that underbelly on there. That foam is fairly adhesive, but it's sure not gonna hold up to an 8-foot wide sheet of material there blowing in the wind going down the highway. Plus this way it's set so that water won't get driven into the trailer or debris. There's a fair bit of dirt back there. So that's all done. Actually, where that row of bolts is, there's a bulkhead in there, and they had the underlayment sealed to that, so kind of that last bit of bumper wasn't really weather tight, but I just don't like the idea of debris blowing in there. And so to reseal it, I just squirted some of this in here. First time I've gotten one of these reuse it tips. Basically there's a little plastic rod running up the straw there in this one. So if I wanted to continue spraying, I can just plunk that foam off and it'll spray, which was really handy because I would lay new foam down 2 edges and push the belly up and get 2 bolts in and get that padded down, and then, you know, more foam and repeat that. So ordinarily, I'm sure I would have had the straw clog a whole bunch of times and had to have cut it off or end up with the can being worthless, but that worked out really well. So that's pretty okay. And then when I was looking at making bigger cross members, I realized I was going to have a fairly wide foot for it to bolt to the frame, but I'm going to want one of them pretty close to where the jacks mount. One of them's going to end up, I want the crossbar pretty close to where that suspension bracket is, and kind of same thing with the front one there. So change that a little bit. I'm about to weld those. Let's see. So here's the material I'm using that's actually extruded 1x2U. It's a fair bit heavier than 2 factory pieces. And honestly, this is probably overkill. 3 more bars, the strength that the factory put in, would probably keep that tank just fine unless you really drove it like an idiot. But anyway, this is stronger. It'll be slightly heavier. And kind of downsized these brackets that I've just wanted to use to kind of use more than 2 bolts would spread out the load a little bit on the frame. So just kind of extending off one side should work pretty good. And I just, you know, I had that piece of 4-inch wide strip there that I just plasma cut ends off of. So I'll get these welded, and then on the outside edges, you know, once these are welded, I'll just drill through these and take them out there. But on the outside edges, I'm going to use a bolt, 1/4-inch bolt, and a lock nut. And on the inside, I'll be using the equivalent, basically. I think it's a number 14 self-drilling, self-tapping bolt. And by the time those are on there, I don't think there'll be any concern about the water tank sagging or going anywhere. Well, I forget where I left off here, but these are all in. I decided not to bother with the nut on the outside. I just went ahead and used self-tappers because there's quite a bit of meat in that frame for them to bite into. So I think I used 1.5 here where they're going through the C-channel and this piece of plate, and then I was able to use just 1 inch to go through where I'm just going through the steel bracket. By the time you get there's some foam smashed in there and stuff. So yeah, Jeez. Not much of a weld. Looks like some old guy with shaky hands and eyeball transplants did that. But anyhow, there's one across there, kind of between the two factory pieces here. And probably the main one is right across behind that suspension hanger. Comes a bit behind the tank drain, and the tank ends right there. So with 5 bars across here, you can tell it's really got the tank supported. It was that front one where it was really starting to sag, so I think that'll prevent cracks and whatnot. And I don't know if I showed, I've got those switches and tank heaters are in upstairs. The elbow heaters on the dump valves are drawing about an amp. I think maybe a little more. The tank heater itself won't draw anything. It actually has a thermostat built in. So anyway, hope this is helpful for anybody that has one of these. I think maybe just getting a thinner extruded or a folded sheet steel C-channel would probably be plenty. This is what my steel shop had laying around. For a little bit more, I could have gotten rectangular 1x2 box and welded it up. But actually, the C-channel is kind of handy because it's easy to run a bolt through the edge of it, and bolts over here. Honestly, 2 bolts would probably be sufficient, but I kind of like the way that came out, spreading the load a little bit on the frame, and they're stronger than they need to be, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So anyway, I guess that's it for this project. And I can just end with one more little clip kind of showing perspective of how these are in there. So now there's 5 steel ribs under that tank that spans from just ahead of where that drain valve is to just behind this last cross member.